rookie running backs had an excellent season in 2020, but how are they going to do in future years? Time to talk with Michael Fabiano, SI fantasy football analyst, about his dynasty running back rankings. And Fabs, I noticed on your list, on your rankings list this year, the running backs that were rookies in 2020, they're very promising. Helped a lot of people win their championships. But for dynasty purposes, they're so hard to find. You really have to hit on them at the right time when they are rookies. So let's talk about three rookies that you analyzed last year and what you project for them going forward.
And let's start off with Jonathan Taylor. He's my 9th ranked player overall. He's my RB6, 22 years old, finished this past season as the RB6. And keep in mind, he wasn't even the featured back for most of the season. He only came on in the second half. He averaged over 22 touches and 24 fantasy points per game over his final 6 contests. Marlon Mack's a free agent. I mean, Jonathan Taylor's a first-round pick in redrafts, and he is a very valuable asset in dynasty leagues. Now let's talk about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now I'm going to eat a little crow here because I thought he was a first-round pick in redrafts. And let's be honest, before the Chiefs, for some reason, brought in Le'Veon Bell, he was well worth it. He was on pace for over 1,800 scrimmage yards and to finish as a top 12 fantasy running back. Well, obviously it did not happen. He finished with over 1,100 scrimmage yards on the season, but it could have been better. Damian Williams is coming back in 2021. He opted out due to COVID. But remember, this is dynasty. This is long-term. Edwards-Helaire is only 22 years old going into next season, and most running backs under Andy Reid's offense have thrived. So forget about what happened in his rookie campaign, folks. He is my RB10 in dynasty leagues right now. James Robinson, which is crazy, right? It was a pretty deep running back class in 2021, and one of the top 2 guys wasn't even drafted by an NFL team. James Robinson, I have him as my RB23. He'll be I have him ranked as my RB17. He'll be 23 years old going into next season. And he was the RB7 this past campaign. He had over 1,400 scrimmage yards, 10 touchdowns. And now I'll have Trevor Lawrence in the backfield unless something crazy happens. But Lawrence is going to go to Jacksonville in the draft. So think about that. Robinson will get the benefit of one of the top quarterbacks to come out of college in a long, long time. So James Robinson, my number 36 player overall in Dynasty, and my RB17.
All right, so Taylor, Edwards-Helaire, Robinson, all were rookies in 2020, all very promising and bright futures going 2021 and beyond. But let's talk about a veteran, Joan Mixon. He did not have a good season. He was injured for the majority of it. Where do you have him ranked?
I have Mixon 38th overall and as the RB18. He'll be 25 going into next season, so he's still relatively young in the prime of his career. I know he only played 6 games, but he averaged more than 16 fantasy points per game. He did have that one big game, but after he had that big game, he was still putting up decent numbers. Now, the Bengals should look to improve that offensive line through the draft. They really need to do that, not only to protect Joe Burrow, but to help the running game as well. And Joe Mixon will be back at 100% in 2021. So I wouldn't give up on him just yet. He has shown that he can be a top 10, top 12 type of fantasy running back when he's healthy. And I know a lot of us out there are disappointed in what he didn't do in 2020, but he's still a young back and he's still a featured back, and that's hard to find.
All right, you got to check out Michael Fabiano's complete dynasty rankings. You can check it all out, si.com/fantasy. Fantasy football season never ends, especially when you're in a dynasty league. So go check out Fab's rankings.